slowly but surely will be work on recapping of the Recordgraph machine. Notice only 3 there have check marks. Some of the capacitors I already had amongst my components, but most I don't have because of their high voltage nature. I have some very nice looking colorful 0.01 microfarad 400 volt, 0.022 microfarad 400 volt, and a couple of 50 volt 47 microfarads, which will go in place of the 50 microfarad 40 volt caps. But other than that, the others will have to be ordered. But I got the Recordgraph here. You can see the bottom of the Recordgraph machine. You can turn the camera sideways. You can kind of see there a nice view of that point-to-point wiring. And it's riddled with paper capacitors. Riddled with paper capacitors. And I did test the ESR on this capacitor here as double capacitor. This one seems like it's still good, although I'm going to go ahead and replace it. This other one though down here is 100% bad. Absolutely no passage of any current from the ESR meter. It just read complete zero. It's just complete infinity ohms, you could say, not zero. It's completely bad. And then of course there's a whole bunch of paper caps and old electrolytic, which is still read kind of okay, but I'm going to replace that anyway. And anyway, a lot of old capacitors in this thing that are going to need to be replaced. And I have not powered this up yet because I want to replace the caps first instead of putting that unfiltered DC through this thing. I want to replace them first. Thankfully though, of course, the original belt is good. There's even a tensioner idler right here to ensure that it's on there nice and tight. And I tested the windings of the record needle and the playback needle, and they are both good because I hooked them up to an audio amplifier, and I would tap the needle and you'd hear the tapping through the amplifier. And even with the recording needle, if I tap the recording needle, you could actually hear the tapping through an external amplifier. So that's very good news because I know we don't have open windings on two of the most important components in this device. And I know the motor winding is good because I tried hooking the motor up to a meter and then I would kind of spin it a little bit and it generated a little bit of voltage. So I know the motor winding should also be good. Welcome viewers. I have recapped the Recordgraph Model A film recording machine. Safety, safety. This will be the first power-up after the recap. We'll see how this thing manages to run. It's the moment of truth, as they say. I have it hooked up to a Variac. This is in the on position now. The motor is turned off. 10 volts is going to the Recordgraph now. I'll be watching the tube to see if I see any glow. I'm raising the Variac voltage. Of course you can't see the Variac because I'm covering everything up. I can see the backlit light there just barely glowing on the meter. A little bit more. 45 volts into the Recordgraph right now. The light is lighting up more on the meter. Hopefully nothing will hopefully everything will be good. I heard a sound, but it sounded more like a solenoid than anything. The meter is lighting up more brilliantly now. The amp is running. We'll continue raising the voltage slowly but surely. Oh, why are you turning? I told you, motor, not to turn. The motor is set to stop and the record graph insisted on actually running. Oh, whoa, 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 stop that. Already I can see the new needle is just carving at this poor film. So that's something we don't want. Nothing's coming out though when I do this to the needle. Well, it is set to neutral. And the film is managing to run through quite smoothly. Quite something just to see it turn. I don't know why it's running though. The motor isn't supposed to be on right now, but yet it's running very happily for some reason. Yeah, this motor starts up. I don't know why it's always running the motor. Some updates here. I have the cartridge of the record graph opened up. The coil's good, no worries there. But the needle is on a pivot. And it's supposed to move back and forth. And it's supposed to move back and forth a tiny little pole within a magnetized, two sides of a magnetized ring of metal. And then that magnetized ring is to magnetize the pivot, and then as it moves within the coil, it generates electricity, which is amplified. But the problem is that pivot point is just not moving with ease at all. And I believe that's why I'm having problems with playback, because when I play, although I can play back recordings, they're extremely weak and they just don't come through very well at all. But I can tell when I go into record mode, the head vibrates so valiantly, and you can even hear it. I think the recording is working really well. It's just the playback where the problem is. Oh, and if you haven't already known, yes, the record graph is recapped. Yes, the record graph, I was able to actually play on the film. The film seemed to be blank, but I was able to record and play on the film. And but it just was weak. So you can see here's a pivot piece on the side here, and you can see it looks like there's like old grease or something. It's just all drying up, and So I'm going to just get rid of all that mumbo jumbo and put that back together. Okay, so the little assembly has been cleaned and lubricated, and the needle seems like it moves a little bit more freely now than when it did before, because before it had the old gummed up grease. And of course that little bit inside has to move, you know, right there in the center of the coil, in between those two pole pieces. The armature moves back and forth. It's a balanced armature design, very much like the transducers that were in those sound-powered telephones I showed in that one video. And then of course I have put the magnet back into place. Oh, now it's wanting to get stuck to one side or the other. Finding a balanced sound would not be easy. But we'll have to see how this performs anyway. DC resistance is 1.7 kilo ohms in my example. After doing that little cleaning and lubrication, a big improvement has been made in playback. I should have done a compared contrast. I should have made some video footage of how it was performing before, but I didn't, unfortunately. But I can tell you it was extremely weak, and it was not so easy to hear recordings play back very well. And now there's a big improvement, so let's see if we can hear this recording on track 13.
Armature cartridge, and the cartridge is now performing a whole lot better than it was before. We're now going on into track 14 here, so hopefully today's date is the 17th of May 2019, 7:15 p.m. I need to go to bed pretty soon. I'm tired of coming in at 4 so soon.
That last bit of film over towards the end, there was a section of film that ripped off the side, unfortunately. So it still runs through the machine because the other side is still carried through on the sprocket. And I got to kind of push it so that the broken off part doesn't catch on here, get stuck, strain the continuous loop, and cause the film to get broken somewhere else. And you'd think, oh, but I ordered new film and I could use this new film, but there's a problem. Yeah, they're both 35mm film, but the spacing of the sprocket holes on this more modern film is just a tad bit wider than the spacing of the sprocket holes on this really old film, which means this film is not quite compatible with the Recordgraph because it will not fit evenly into the sprocket drive of the Recordgraph, which is very unfortunate. So I'm forced to use the old Recordgraph film, which thankfully was blank because I don't have to feel like the worst person in the world for ruining historical recordings. Now, you heard in the recording earlier there was a section that sounded real statically, like that was unfortunately destructive work of the old sewing needle that I had originally tried on the Recordgraph, which I have learned that sewing needles are not the kind of needles you want to use on any kind of phonographic reproduction equipment. It literally scraped into the film. It was even swarfing the film when I was using the sewing needle. I finally ordered off of eBay a pack of 100 loud tone needles for 78 RPM Victrolas. And the needle is just the right size to stick into the Recordgraph cartridge. It's the perfect needle. It fits right into the Recordgraph, which is fantastic. So that recording you just heard was made with a carbon mic, just this telephone carbon mic, because there's a carbon mic input on there and it was convenient. There's a microphone input too, but it has a certain kind of jack that I don't have on hand right now. Although I can also make dynamic mic recordings in the carbon mic jack, which I'm going to do now. Turn the volume all the way down, because when I go into neutral, it acts as a PA system and it easily feeds back. Go into record. Hello, 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 and then it doesn't always engage. There we go. So we're on track 15. I'm using a dynamic mic. This is for a video. Now I'm probably going to make two different videos. This video and then a more specialized, concise presentation with various views and so forth. At least I've imagined that in my head. Okay, so we're switching over to track 16. I don't want to overuse this film too quickly because it's not like I can just go record over it like magnetic tape. So anyway, but this is a recording on the Recordgraph using the dynamic microphone to hear any difference of sound quality, and also doubles as another test. See how this is going. We're going to the crazy part of the film. Okay, bye. Stop! Stop! Has a mind of its own. Sometimes it makes its own decisions. Okay. Actually, I think that was the trackage motor when it's in record mode and the trackage motor is busy changing over to the next track. It will keep the main motion engaged until the trackage motor is finished. Of course, all that will be discussed because at some point, either this video or a separate presentation video, I'm going to go into depth, into detail on things like the trackage motor and so forth. This is a very interesting device. Let's go to... Oh, gosh! That's why I unplug the mic. We're now in playback mode. Now the needle is very sensitive if I touch it now. It used to not be as sensitive. Let's go back to track 15. I've got to go into neutral to change tracks. Once I go into playback or record and I kind of move the knob, it locks into a track. Of course, once the trackage motor stuff engages, it will switch tracks.
Dynamic mic. This is for a video. Video. This video makes a number of specialized sounds, presentation, various views, and so forth. Imagine that in my head. Okay, so we're switching over to track 16. And I'm going to overuse this film quickly because it's not up to the solo or like magnetic tape. So anyway, the dynamic microphone to hear the difference of sound quality has a double to another test. I'm going to take this off the phone next time.
Quite the machine. Brace yourselves. When it's to switch to the next track, notice these slight notches in the film here. The sensor senses this and activates the trackage motor. This is the Recordgraph Model A sound recorder. Now, I've not been having very much luck with getting this thing to be able to play back very well at all. Although it's better than it was earlier, i.e. the cartridge originally, the lubricant on the side was all hardened. The needle couldn't move very freely, so the sound pickup was extremely weak. I have cleaned the inside and lubricated it, and now the needle moves more freely. Cartridge is more sensitive. But, and although the output is considerably louder than it was before then, I still am getting very bad performance out of it. Now, I've heard digitized recordings of Amertapes before, including digitized recordings of recordings that were originally transferred to vinyl records or something similar in the 1940s, of the D-Day invasions or so forth, World War II recordings that were played back from one of these and transferred in its day. So I know it should be capable of far better sound quality than I'm getting. Now, part of it is probably the needle. I ordered some needles that are meant for playing 78 RPM records on old Victrolas. Well, they're loud tone type needles and they fit in here perfectly. Although I am suspecting that the shape of the point is probably where the problem is. Now, when I first had this, I didn't have any record needles, and I put a sewing needle on there, which carves at the film, scrapes it, and ruins the part of the film the needle has been on. Yes, I know. Go ahead, kill me. And so it doesn't have any historical recordings. The thing with the film was blank anyway. But so I ordered the loud tone needles, and finally I was able to run the machine without damaging the film by the needle. But I think it has to do with the tip, because if I position the needle more at an angle, or more of its surface area kind of touched the film, I would get more bass response, but still having a hard time getting good sound quality out of this thing at all, or a nice consistent sound for the most part. Because I think that the record player needles are too small of an angle. Like, first of all, the difference with the sewing needles and the record player needles is a sewing needle, I think, is basically just a point, a sharp point. A record player needle is actually supposed to be like rounded at the end and then come at angles. But I think that the needle on here, the angle is more like this. The needle that's supposed to be on the record graph. But the needle that I found to install on the record graph is more like this. The angle is too small, I think, so the needle is not being modulated as well as it should be by the grooves. I think that's what's going on. And if that's not enough, this old film is brittle, and there's parts of the film that just keep breaking off the edges. And you'd think, no problem, order some 35mm leader film, because this is 35mm film after all, right? So I did. I ordered some 35mm leader film. Good, I can make a new film for it, but here's the problem. Here we have these two films, the record graph film and the leader film. You notice anything different about these? You might not. Well, let's look again. You'll notice that the width of both is exactly the same, 35mm film. No worries there. But here's the problem. The spacing of the sprocket holes or perforations. The width here on the leader film is slightly larger. Now the width here is the standard for 35mm movie film. And I was researching to try to see if I could find anything about film that has this smaller width. I couldn't really turn up much of anything. I found one digitized, I guess, copy of text from a book from the 50s that mentioned a change of sprocket size without too much other information. But it really didn't delve into things. And I can't find anywhere else on the internet that talks about, oh, I have 35mm film that won't fit into my camera because the holes are, the sprocket's just too narrow or something. None of that. No. You'd think maybe someone out there has come across similar film, but the sprocket holes of the record graph are just slightly closer together width-wise, not the spacing. The spacing in between each hole here is equal, but the width here is different. So this won't quite fit into the sprocket drive of the record graph, and it will not track well, so it's useless on the record graph. If you can't already tell, I'm in a rather defeated and very annoyed mood because this machine is most exciting, unique, rare, special machine to have, and it's supposed to be able to perform pretty well and have pretty decent sound quality considering what it is, aside from a narrow frequency response. And I'm just having the pretty sorry luck with this device. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to find a needle that has the right angle for it. The original needle, of course, was long gone when I acquired this thing. Thankfully, the recording needle was still in place, but the playback needle was completely missing. And it wasn't like flapping around in the bottom of the box or anything like that. It was gone, period. So, anyway, but it's an interesting design, this whole device. I have it in thread, which de-energizes a motor. Put into playback. And the starting and stopping doesn't always work so well. And then there's this crap. Because the sprocket holes are broke off on the other side of the film there, so I gotta, what I might just do, and then also this stupid solenoid drive is just, and it does not always pull the lever out from the ratchet thing that keeps the clutched sprocket drive from turning. The motor switch here doesn't turn the motor on and off. The motor switch turns a little relay, clutch relay on and off. But the clutch relay isn't all this most strongest thing in the world. So most of the time it doesn't even. Now, of course, I'm sure normally it worked just fine. I mean, when I first was running this thing for the first time, clutch relay was working every time, and then all of a sudden the clutch relay took a second before it fired, and then finally, most of the time, it's not even bothering to provide enough power to engage. Then there's a problem of the needle. When I move it back and forth, there's 3 positions it can go. This is a vernier adjustment. It adjusts a slight side-to-side adjustment of the needle to try to keep it on the same track as the recording. And it is, I have to adjust it a lot. You can't understand any of this. This is supposed to be music. It's not music. Anyway, needs to be spliced there anyway, and the broken off parts taken off. Inevitably that was going to happen, and it makes all the most sense that it would happen on video. So without showing any operation of the film, I will describe the rest of the features. If I improve this at all in the future, I may upload future videos. Apologize to all the viewers for a most crappy demonstration and a not good mood to boot. Although I think you can understand why my mood isn't so good right now. So, I won't want to have that touching the sprocket when this thing is just without film. The audio troll. This machine has some interesting features that especially for its day, are quite impressive. Automatic voice control, which is automatic level control. It's kind of combined with manual level control, because you can still adjust the basic recording level with the volume control, but when you put it on automatic voice control, it keeps it from overdriving. When the audio control is turned off, you just start and stop it right here, and adjust the level with the volume control. When you turn the audio control on, I think you can adjust the sensitivity of it, but when the audio control is on, the recording actually will, once it receives an audio signal, it will activate the clutch relay and start recording once it receives an audio signal, and once the audio signal is gone, probably after some time delay, it will stop. So that way you can have it, it's like the voice activation feature on a lot of micro cassette recorders. Now, of course, I've shot some previous video yesterday or something like that, or the day before, of this thing playing some recordings and me recording with a dynamic mic. So you'll be able to see a better example of this machine in operation, and at least I think I was able to play back some intelligible recordings that I did in that video. Heck, I haven't even showed a really good description of the trackage motor mechanism, and now that the film's broken, I can't quite do that quite yet. Hopefully regular cellophane tape isn't going to be a problem here. Forget, screw the camera. I cut out the messed up portion of film, taped the film together. Try it now. Oh, and I was mentioning before the pull pieces and 3 positions. This needle here can be in one of 3 basic positions. All the way on one end, the armature is touching one pull piece. That won't emit any sound. And touching the other pull piece won't emit any sound. You have to be right in the middle. Because you got the magnet here, and you got the armature in here, and it's supposed to, the needle pivots like that. It's supposed to be within there, but sometimes it goes like that in the metal piece. The magnet, when it goes there and all the way, it wants it to stay there because the magnet holds it. Same for on the other side. So the needle has to be right in the middle.
Record better. Pressing down harder will record better. Testing 1, 2, 3, it's pressed down. So then goes down as monitor. Testing. Let's see if this comes out to the track 36, by the way. Alright. Press down harder again. I'm pressing the track positions. Track. It's easy. Look at this little box. This little not front. Except for the press and the attitude.
Okay, let's show the trackage motor. Here's the back of the Recordgraph Model A. So, of course, it's a vacuum tube based machine. When it's in thread position, the motor is de-energized. Any other position turns on the motor. Then there's one other motor. Notice all the hot glue. That's because probably during shipping this hit the back and the flanges, the fiberglass flanges that the wires were mounted to, which then connected to the tiny fine coil wire, magnet wire, and the flanges were broke, and one of the wires had broken. I managed to solder it back. That's the one on the right. The other one was still intact, so I held those together with lots and lots and lots of hot glue. So this is very similar to an 8-track cartridge system, because the 8-track cartridge runs in a continuous loop and has multiple tracks, and has a means of sensing when the loop has ran through one course and switches to the next track. Similarly, when those notches on the film go past a little lever, it activates a switch which starts the trackage motor in operation. So here's a trackage motor's mechanism. You can see the gearbox, and you can see this wheel. So when I go to neutral position, I can manually select tracks. Now it's hard to see down in here with a camera. Now notice if I, amongst the things here, it's hard to see this lever when it's in playback position or record. The lever goes inside the notch, so the track selector is locked into place. Of course, that lever's moved out of the way and the thing is allowed to turn when the trackage motor is engaged. There's another view of the wheel. It's hard to see in here with the camera. It's far easier to see in there with the human eye. Believe me. Believe me. But there's a paw down in there which catches onto the trackage motor. So let's see if I can show it in operation. Okay, now watch. Oh gosh, it's still in film. Okay, it wasn't spilling too much. I hope you saw that move, because the spilling of film made me do this and that and all that stupid crap. So, but anyway, the little mechanism in there is pretty ingenious. To move to the next track. It's very interesting how that's designed. Another thing I like in the design is this pulley here pushes against the belt, keeps it nice and tight. Oh, mind you, this is the original belt. It's a fiber belt, not a rubber belt, so it has lasted the test of time quite well. And then here's the vernier adjustment. Anyway. Yeah. This has been a ironically crappy production. Presented to you by defeated yours truly. I realize that all my efforts on this machine are ultimately futile to a particular degree because I don't know if I'll ever be able to get a proper needle for it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to attain the original kind of sound quality that was able to be gotten out of these machines in their day. But anyway, so I was expecting to be able to have this machine operating far better than it is. And with all the breaking of film, all the time I spent trying to adjust the needle position, adjust the needle pressure, adjust this, adjust that, trying to get it to be better, has just kind of left me just a little bit burned out. I just kind of tired of it for the time being. I think it's about time I move on to some other projects. But anyway, it's a neat device. Don't get me wrong. It's a very interesting device. If I could get a, now of course I could try, the one that people may suggest a regular record player cartridge, but I tried getting a little cartridge and holding it up to the grooves, but it sounded very tinny, no bass, shrill, and I don't really want to modify or remove the original head to try to put in something with the modern record player style needle, cartridge. But I don't know if anyone out there has any knowledge about film with closer together width of the perforations like the Recordgraph had, or knows of other needles out there that have a angle that is a larger angle, that's more, it's more like this as opposed to like, or maybe like, instead of like that, I want it more like this. Like I want an angle that is, I want it to be one of those needles that's goes into the electrical pickup, but is the tip is more like this than like that, so to speak, because I'm afraid that the modulation of the needle isn't so good with this one, because a recording needle, for example, its angle is far wider. The recording needle is more like this. So the playback needle is probably also supposed to be shaped like this, or very close to it. And yes, it's a pencil you haven't seen yet. It's a Bic Grade Erase 0.7mm style of pencil I had in the 2nd grade, and managed to find some more in the estate sale after not having used this model pencil for at least 18 years. So that's kind of special. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. I was originally I had the idea, if I had this machine operating in a proper way, I probably would have I wanted to make a more special video with like editing galore, and you got a close up of the trackage mechanism, and all of a sudden it seamlessly goes into like the things moving, and it's the numbers moving, or the needles close up and it shows where the motor's and I can make it look all cool and stuff. But whenever it's not operating so well, The film's going all crazy, although I managed to splice it. Get rid of this messed up film. And, you know, in a playback, I can't even barely get an intelligible recording to come out of the thing for the video. It just kind of ruins the entire feeling. Any motivation to like make a more flashy, fancy video of this is completely flushed down the toilet. It's like, why should I even give a crap? When it's all for something, it's a letdown is what it is. It's a letdown. And I'm sure for you viewers, it's anticlimactic. It's a shame. It's a friggin' shame.